Okay, so we've got a stack of reviews here about this new film, The Apprentice.
Right.
A biopic about, well, Donald Trump, which in 2024, I got to say that's already got my attention. But it sounds like this isn't, your typical documentary.
No, not at all. This is a fully dramatized, like, Hollywood movie.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, focusing on Trump's early years in real estate, set against, like, the backdrop of 1970s New York City.
Oh, wow. So we're talking like gritty, glamorous, that whole vibe.
Yeah, a lot of the reviews are using words like messy, ambitious, definitely captivating. One even called it, get this, a supervillain origin story.
A supervillain origin story. I mean, you almost couldn't make that up, right? Like, if you tried to write a fictional film about Trump as a villain, how far would you even have to stray from reality?
Right, and that's where the whole historical context thing gets really fascinating. A lot of the critics are pointing out how the film uses that backdrop of 1970s New York, all the decadence and the corruption. It's almost like the city itself becomes a character.
Oh, I see. Like, it's its own breeding ground for the kind of ambition that Trump and Roy Cohn, his mentor, represent.
Exactly.
Okay, and speaking of Cohn, I mean, Jeremy Strong. Come on, that's casting gold right there.
Tell me about it. The reviews are raving, absolutely raving about him. Some even say that that Cohn, as Strong plays him, is almost like the more interesting character.
Really?
Yeah, he's this manipulative, ruthless lawyer. And some critics argue he was really the one who, like, shaped Trump's persona.
Whoa. Okay, so it's not just a Trump biopic then. It's also exploring this whole power dynamic between them, this like mentor-mentee thing.
Totally. There's even a line from one review. It says Cohn passes his, like, sadistic rules for becoming a successful bloodsucker, I think it said, onto Trump.
Wow.
Yeah, like he's inheriting this playbook for ruthless ambition, you know?
So it really frames how you see the whole film, right? So it's not just about Trump. It's about like the systems, the people who enable someone like that to rise.
Absolutely. You've hit on something crucial that, like, all the reviews keep circling back to. It's that whole nature versus nurture question. Was Trump, born this way, or did he become this way because of the people, the environment,
Right. And since it's a dramatic film, not a documentary, they can really play with that, right?
Exactly. They can use all the tools of cinema, the visuals, the editing, the music, to create a specific feeling and interpretation. And speaking of the visuals, this film, from what I'm reading, sounds visually stunning.
Okay, yeah, tell me more about that. There were a few critics who mentioned the cinematography, the overall aesthetic being very unique.
Yeah. One mentioned the aspect ratio. It's 1.33.1.
Right.
Which was super common in older films, but you almost never see it these days.
Right. Yeah.
So it instantly makes you think of, like, classic Hollywood, but it also adds this layer of intentional distance, like you're watching a historical epic almost.
So even before the story starts, just from the look of it, they're making a statement, like they're placing Trump in this lineage of powerful, larger-than-life figures.
Exactly. And the music, too, seems to be very deliberate. Reviewers use terms like screeching horror synths and brass-heavy dramatic music. It's like a blend of political thriller meets psychological horror.
Okay. Well, that's a combo I didn't know I needed.
Yeah.
But it makes sense, right, to have that classic Hollywood feel, but then this undercurrent of tension, unease.
Yeah, and don't forget, this film is coming out in 2024, right in the middle of a presidential election.
Oh, right. So this isn't just some historical figure. This is a film that's directly engaging with the political landscape right now.
Completely. Which brings us to Sebastian Stan as young Trump.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. Is he doing the voice, the mannerisms? Honestly, I'm kind of Trumpy impersonations are kind of played out at this point, right?
And that's what's so interesting. Reviewers are actually praising Stan for not doing an impression. Yeah, they're saying he's capturing something way more unsettling. The transformation, like, how did this guy become the persona we all know?
Oh, that's kind of chilling when you think about it. Like, just slowly seeing those mannerisms creep in as the character, descends.
One review even called it a slow creep of Trumpisms throughout the film, which I thought was a great way to put it.
That is really good. So we've got this film that, sounds visually amazing, soundtrack's great, incredible actors, and it's this fascinating look, not just at Trump, but at, like, the whole world that created him. But how are people reacting to it? Like, is 2024 ready for a film like this?
Well, that seems to be like the big question, right?
Yeah.
The reviews all kind of point to it being, let's just say it's going to be divisive.
Divisive, how so?
Well, one reviewer said that, people who already like can't stand Trump, they might just avoid it altogether. Like they get a nug of him in real life.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that. But then how are, like, his diehard supporters going to react to a film that's, not exactly going to paint him in the best light?
Right. And that's the tightrope this film is walking. It's a biopic, but it's also like clearly making a statement. Several reviewers use words like abrasive, even shocking to describe certain scenes.
Okay, so it's definitely not shying away from, some of the more difficult aspects of Trump and Coon's lives. But how does it handle that? Is it gratuitous, or is it more nuanced? Like trying to get you to understand these people, not just, judge them.
It seems like the consensus is that the film's more interested in exploring that darkness than like just exploiting it. One review even compared it to The Social Network in that way, like it's a captivating character study even if you don't like the people being portrayed.
Okay, I'm sensing a theme here. It's not just a biopic, it's a character study, and it's using this specific moment in time, the rise of Trump, the relationship with Cohn, to say something bigger about, like, I don't know, ambition, power, even America itself.
You got it. And there's this one line from a review that I think just nails it. It says, "The country's integrity is a thin veil with dozens of corrupt, evil men hiding behind it as they play with our lives."
Whoa. Okay, that's a heavy statement. So the film's implying that Trump and Cohn are just like two players in a much bigger game.
Exactly. And that's what makes it so unsettling, right? Because if their story isn't like unique, if they're just a symptom of something larger,
Hmm.
what does that say about us?
Right. Like, are we complicit in their rise? Did we in some way allow this to happen? Okay, that's a lot to unpack. But before we go too far down that rabbit hole, there's one more thing I wanted to ask. Some reviewers mentioned, like, the unintentional comedy of the film. What's that all about?
Oh, yeah, yeah. That's where the whole like fiction versus reality thing gets really interesting. One reviewer talked about laughing at moments in the film and then realizing like, oh, wait, that's a Trumpism.
So things that are, in real life, shocking, outrageous, you put them in a movie and they become funny.
Yeah, it's like the film's holding up a mirror to our own like desensitization. It makes a question like what's truly outrageous anymore.
Wow. That's brilliant, but also kind of terrifying.
But it speaks to the power of satire,
Yeah.
right? And the reviews seem to agree, even with all the darkness and, unsettling stuff, it's also incredibly entertaining.
Yeah, you were talking earlier about that live wire dynamic between Stan and Strong, which, again, just plays right into that whole mentor-mentee power struggle, but, like, cranked up to 11.
Oh, the chemistry is electric. Reviewers called their scenes together magnetic, intense. You get this feeling that their relationship is like deeply unhealthy, but also weirdly symbiotic.
Like, they need each other, even though they're, like,
Yeah.
toxic for one another. I gotta say,
Yeah.
just hearing you talk about the film's perspective, it's making me see Trump in a whole new light.
And that seems to be the consensus. Whether you love him or hate him, this film is going to challenge your perceptions of Donald Trump.
Okay, so we've got ambition, corruption, an amazing soundtrack, unintentional comedy, but ultimately, does it work? Like, as a film, is it good? So it's thought-provoking, it's divisive, visually stunning, amazing music, but, I mean, is it actually good? Sometimes a movie can, check all the boxes and still not quite come together. What are the reviewers saying?
Well, yeah, I mean, no film is universally beloved, right? And even with all this buzz, The Apprentice definitely has its detractors.
Okay, yeah, what are they saying? Like, what doesn't work?
A couple of reviewers mentioned the pacing felt like uneven in places. Like it gets a little bogged down, even if the overall story is, holding their attention.
Yeah, I could see that. With a subject like this, I bet there's a temptation to, like, cram every little detail in there, every scandal. It's got to be hard to find that balance between being comprehensive and keeping things moving.
Totally. And there are a few reviews that while they like appreciate what the film is trying to do, they're not sure it fully, lives up to its own potential.
You mentioned earlier some reviewers using words like abrasive, shocking.
Oh.
Is that part of the criticism too? Or is it more that, like, even when it's being provocative, it's still doing something interesting?
Yeah, that seems to be the distinction. Even the reviewers who had issues with like the pacing or found certain scenes, hard to watch, they still acknowledge that it's doing something different, something important. It's starting a conversation at least.
Which is, I mean, that's what's so interesting about these deep dives we do, right?
Yeah.
We're not just talking about like thumbs up, thumbs down on a movie. We're talking about the ideas it's engaging with, the feelings it evokes. And it sounds like The Apprentice is definitely doing that.
Oh, for sure. It's not a passive viewing experience. It gets under your skin, makes you think, maybe makes you squirm a little bit.
Yeah.
But that seems to be like the point.
For sure. And I think one reviewer said something like, this film isn't trying to be the definitive word on Trump. It's more like a starting point. I thought that was
Yeah.
interesting.
Absolutely, it's true. And you touched on this earlier, the idea of Trump as like a symptom of a larger problem. A lot of the reviews bring that up, like we need to look beyond just the individual and examine the systems that allowed someone like him to gain power in the first place.
Which brings us back to that the final thought you left us with Trump as a nobody that capitalized when no one else did.
Yeah.
If this film really is a reflection on the world that made him, I mean, what does that tell us about ourselves?
Yeah.
About what we value, what we aspire to?
It's a question worth sitting with, wouldn't you say?
Definitely.
The Apprentice, it seems, it's more than just a biopic. It's a challenge, a provocation, a chance to really examine not just, one man's story, but our own place in the world that allowed that story to happen in the first place.